Hey everyone, my name is Poisonblade and I hope all of you are having a good day today. So for today's video, I'm going to go back into one of my old builds that I kinda left unfinished because I went from Kayan al-Bashar into Valhalla for a bit. But now that we're back into Kayan al-Bashar, I wanted to finish the Monastery of Poseidon. Starting today by building the temple and also building the gate into the actual monastery. But the main focus will be today on the Temple of Poseidon, which cue the normal spiel of I wanted to start out small and then it became just huge because I got inspired by one of the 7 ancient wonders of the world, namely the Temple of Artemis. So again, temple started out small, became huge, and now we're here. Let's get started with the video, shall we? So this is going to be a two-parter when it comes to the Monastery of Poseidon, because as I said, today we're building the temple and the gate into the monastery, but there's going to be a whole lot more that I need to build, so this is going to be a two-parter. Although technically it is actually a three-parter because I built the Grey Seal habitat with the huge-ass statue of Poseidon a few months ago, so technically it's a three-parter, but just, you know, to make it easy for me, I'm just going to call it a two-parter for now. But yes, this Monastery of Poseidon is going to be huge. And to avoid any confusion, the temple is part of the larger monastery. Kind of works with Poseidon being a very important deity, of course, in Kayan al-Bashar. I think Hades and Persephone are like the more favored deities, but that doesn't mean that Poseidon is any less important because Kayan al-Bashar is in a huge ass desert. You need water there to survive. So Poseidon would be like, you know, in ancient Rome, or basically in Rome, they had the big three gods. They had Juno, Jupiter, and Minerva, basically Hera, Zeus, Athena, which were the three big gods of Rome. Kayan al-Bashar would probably just have Persephone, Hades, and Poseidon. Maybe Aphrodite, because there's of course a whole lot of beauty thing going on in Kayan al-Bashar. So maybe Kayan al-Bashar has 4 really important gods and then the rest is sort of hanging around that. But when it came to the Temple of Poseidon, I started out thinking I want to see if I can make the Temple of Persephone, the old version, like the standard rectangular Greek temple, if I can make that design fancy and work in Kayan al-Bashar. And I'm not saying that the old version of Persephone's temple is bad in of itself. It's just it was small and very demure, which in Kayan al-Bashar just doesn't work. It did fall flat. You have the huge Hagia Sophia in the background, you have Tower Ridge to the left of it, and then you have a huge aqueduct to the right of it, and then you have this tiniest temple. It's just going to fall flat between these big landmarks. So what I wanted to do with the Temple of Poseidon was to make sure it stands out. And now I feel sad for Hades, because Poseidon is going to get this huge ass monastery. Persephone has a beautiful temple and just area around it. Hades has a graveyard. I already said, I think Hades and Persephone are the biggest ones, and then it's Poseidon and maybe Aphrodite, and then the rest hangs around that. But yeah, I might go back into basically the necropolis or the graveyard and give Hades a little bit more, but then I also think Persephone or Poseidon not so much, but Poseidon is, in my eyes, probably the god that would show off the most. He would be boasting about everything. Because again, well, I changed Poseidon's personality for this fantasy world of mine, because that's what you can do when you have a fantasy world. You can just change things if you don't like them. So I made Poseidon a little bit more, let's just say I made Poseidon less of a dick. Because Poseidon in our midst, no matter how you look at it, he's a dick. He doesn't know consent in any sort of way. He's also he's the god of the sea and earthquake, so he is going to be temperamental and such, but still, he's a dick. Same goes for Zeus though. Hades is the more, likable of the three. But when it came to Poseidon's temple, because, Hades, as I said, I feel kind of bad for him because I only gave him a graveyard. But then in the end we are all going to Hades, or at least that's the thought process when it comes to Kayan al-Bashar. everyone is eventually going to go to Hades. Poseidon, like, yeah, everybody had something with him, but eventually we're all going to join the realm of Hades. Kind of weird because Hades is a god, but then sometimes we refer to the underworld as Hades, so it's like he's the god, but he's also the realm sometimes. Or at least, well, they're different, but it's sometimes confusing. But anyway, going back to the actual build, because otherwise I'm just going to talk about how much of a dick Poseidon is, which, I mean, is a fun subject to talk about. I mean, I can't lie. Talking about how much of a dick Poseidon and Zeus are is fun to talk about for me. But I need to somewhat talk about the actual build for today, so... As I said, I wanted to make sure that the original design was still there, that you could still see that it was a Greek temple. So you could see like, oh, the pillars and the rectangular rectangular shape. Although not every Greek temple was a rectangular thing. There were round temples, but they were, I think, in the minority. But I wanted to have that rectangular temple, basically make Persephone's temple fancy, but then also make it work in with Kayan al-Bashar. Because this is the thing with architecture, it develops. It's not in like a constant like stasis, I think it's what you call it. Like if, well, this is basically a big question that I always have. If, let's say, the ancient Greek pantheon was still worshipped to this day and didn't change as much when it came to like the amount of worship, how would ancient Greek or would Greek temples have developed? If, let's say, Christianity didn't happen and all of the ancient pantheons still like continue to be worshipped until this day, how would the architectural style of Greek temples and Roman temples be today? Because we have this like clear picture of Greek temples and Roman temples today as like this rectangular thing and sometimes a round thing, but mostly rectangular. But that's also for a large part because they just stopped being used, so that architectural style just sort of stopped because, well, the buildings weren't used anymore. It's kind of like if you just swipe away or wipe away this entire thing and you basically get a ruin, which is in constant sort of still stasis. So I'm just always curious, like, how would a Greek temple have looked like, or a temple worshipping the Greek pantheon, if the pantheon was continued to be worshipped throughout time? Because, again, architectural styles develop, like new styles come in, old styles go out, old styles might be revived. I mean, Renaissance is one of the clearest examples of that, where the Greek and Roman styles were revived and fit into this new age. So then I wanted to apply that idea or train of thought into Kayan al-Bashar. Because first of all, of course I need to make it fancier, because otherwise it's going to fall flat in Kayan al-Bashar. I mean, you still have like, well, now you have Skrull's Tavern in the background, you have, if you look at it from another direction, the Hagia Sophia in the background. So like, I want to make this temple pop, and for that I need to make it fancy. But I also want to make this temple fit in with Kayan al-Bashar. So what things could I have, or what things did I need to change to make it fit into Kayan al-Bashar, so that it doesn't look like it's just a Greek temple into Kayan al-Bashar, but that it was actually built by the people in Kayan al-Bashar, because architecture is going to reflect where it's built, or by who built it. So when it came to the Temple of Poseidon, I had a very big amount of ideas. And as you could have seen in the beginning, like, I used that pillar thing, a very old build from the first version of Kayan al-Bashar, to kind of like show, basically for myself, what was the size of the temple that I needed or could have. Yeah, that's where it went wrong. The new version, what we ended up with was twice the size of what I needed, so I needed to change the entire landscape, because I'm not going to change the building. Buildings go above landscapes for me. Like, if I have a perfect landscape, but then I build a building that doesn't fit the landscapes get changed, not the building. That's always the case with me. But when it came to the Temple of Poseidon, I first... Well, the only thing that I could really implement was the windows. and just like sort of the color scheme that is in Kayan al-Bashar, and of course the detailing that's in Kayan al-Bashar. But I had the idea for a huge ass dome, or at least like a dome to the back of the building, kind of like a church altar like style. But what we ended up with was not that, because that would have made it 3 times the size that I needed, and that would just be too big. Like, I could modify the landscape for a temple that was 2 times the size that I wanted or needed, but 3 times and it would just, like, it wouldn't fit. So, change that, but I still think that you can see, like, oh, this is, like, it goes off from like a Greek temple, but it is more built by the people in Kayan al-Bashar because of the color scheme. Kayan al-Bashar for some reason likes blue a lot. I mean, I still consider this part of you guys' influence because I started building with a lot more colors, and I used to only build with gray, or not gray, beige and white and brown. Now I'm having a lot of blues and yellows and reds. So that's your guys' damned influence. But anyway, when it came to the inner sanctum of the Temple of Poseidon, again, this is all going to be part of the larger Monastery of Poseidon, but of course the temple is going to be the showstopper or the showpiece of it. But you might look at the top of these floating islands and see a particular shape, and that's going to be very prominent, or just you're going to see that shape in a lot of areas in the Monastery of Poseidon, because the biggest story that I made up for Poseidon is that he was castrated. Because, I mean, I've already explained this, but I wanted to change Poseidon's personality because he's a dick, and yes, I love talking about how much of a dick Poseidon is, but of course, to make that change in personality happen, you need something that's traumatizing enough that it would even change a god, because a god is usually kind of like a statue. Like, it doesn't change unless you throw an earthquake at it or throw it to the ground, or basically just shatter it. So yeah, that's what I needed for Poseidon. So of course I made it disattached. The ding dong is disattached from the rest, or at least it's cut off. But this is what I kind of wanted with like the inner sanctum basically of the temple, that it had some like religious significance. Like, not every temple is going to be built on a holy site, of course, or an area of holy or religious significance. Like, temples are going to sprout up everywhere. But big temples, or yeah, big temples, usually want to have like some like religious significance tied to the area that they're placed in. I mean, you see that today with some churches as well, that they're like near spots of like where saints died, or they get like a saint's body or like pieces of a saint transported to the church. And just like orientation towards a holy site, I think. Aren't mosques like they are orientated with like the way, or the, yeah, you're supposed to like in a mosque you're like supposed to like pray towards Mecca, I think. Churches are mostly like orientated towards Jerusalem. Don't know for certain how it's with synagogues, but I would like to learn that actually. Like, I really just someday want to just talk to not only just a priest for like, you know, Christianity and like Protestantism, Catholics and all of that, but also just like imam or rabbi or rabbi. I'm not good with names, but just, you know, not even just those, but, you know, for me, like, just talking to different people with different views, different religions, and different cultures, that just sounds amazing to me, because you get all of this just knowledge and all of these like different perspectives that might change how you look at the world for a bit, or might change your entire worldview and such, and just broaden your worldview as well. Like, I think I've mentioned this in the past already. I would love to talk to different people with different cultural, religious, and just all of these different backgrounds, because that's, in my opinion, like the way to like grow as a human being. Just to... I mean, I think that you can, like, learn just a lot if you just approach people with, like, an open mind and respect and kindness. Like, yeah. Anyway, I should get back into the video before I go into a whole philosophical thing. But yeah, when it comes to the gates to the monastery, this was actually fun. I built this on stream and I wanted a demure gate. Let's just all say it in basically unanimous. I forgot the word for it. But let's just all say it at once. Poison can't build demure things. Poison can't keep things small unless he's challenged to do so. Because I started out small with this gate, and then I gilded it in gold. Poison can't build small things that are demure. That's the thing. Like, I always just think like, ooh, I could add this, I could add that, I could add that, and then make it shiny, because I'm a squirrel. I like shiny things. I also like to climb on things. So, is that basically just my personality now? I'm a squirrel who likes to climb things, likes shiny things, and likes talking to people, even though I'm, would you say, socially anxious? Like, I don't like to... I want to talk to people, but I also don't want to talk to people. That's basically the thing. Like, I want to learn of different cultures, different religions, and different perspectives, but I don't like talking to people. That's kind of contradicting itself. Like, I want, but I don't like to. That's, that's going to make it difficult. And yeah, this is mostly just because I'm a hermit. I like being a hermit, though. Yeah. There was going to be an explanation, but it's just like, yeah, I like being a hermit. I don't like talking to people. I like being on my own. But then I want to talk to people because that's like how you get into contact with different perspectives, cultures, religions, all of that. But then I also don't like talking to people. How did we get from Poseidon is a dick, architecture is developing, to Poison has a weird personality in which he wants to talk to people, but doesn't want to talk to people at the same time? Also, how have we come to me looking like a pretzel? Because here's the thing, when I do voiceovers, I've said this multiple times, but I become very active with my arms and hands. And I like sort of mimic out my words. Don't do this in real life, but anytime I start a voiceover, I start doing that. And now I've just like sort of circled my arms around each other. Also my legs, actually. I've started to look like a human pretzel. Why am I like this? Alright, let's untangle myself. Also, great tip for when you're doing a voiceover, don't sit on your leg or foot, because you will start losing feeling or sensation in that foot or leg. And then when you move, you get this sort of prickling sensation because somewhat your blood has been cut off. But yeah, anyway, going back into the gate of the Monastery of Poseidon. As I said, Poison can't build small, demure things. But the original idea was to have a waterfall. Like, that was going to happen. Like, Poseidon, god of... Well, Kayan al-Bashar, basically just god of water, not god of the sea in Kayan al-Bashar, because that's also a thing. Gods were somewhat modified to the area that they were worshipped in. So, like, a temple of Poseidon in like a landlocked area, they're not really going to worship the sea. They might worship his earthquake part, but they also just might worship him maybe as more of like a god with like springs and just general water. I mean, the same happened with Aphrodite. Actually, Aphrodite a lot, I think. Where, I mean, in Sparta, Aphrodite was like this more warlike goddess. But then in, I think most of the rest of the Greek world, Aphrodite was kind of like how we know her, as like the goddess of love and beauty. Surprisingly, I think Aphrodite wasn't the goddess of sex in itself, but yeah, and then in Sparta she was very different. But then Sparta was kind of an oddball in a way. Like Sparta, I think a lot of Greek states didn't like Ares, but then Sparta loved Ares. But then this might also be because like a lot of like the literary things that have survived come from Athens, which is a longtime rival of Sparta. So a lot of like sources are going to be kind of biased against Sparta. So Sparta, I think, didn't write as much down as Athens, or maybe just not as much survived as what did survive with like Athens-based sources. So a lot of things will probably be biased against Sparta or just other places in general. Persia, for example, because Persia, from what I know, as a civilization on itself isn't as bad. But then, of course, Athens and just Greece in general got kind of the bad end of Persia with the invasion and such. So of course they're going to demonize their enemies and their rivals, because that's what we continue to do to this day. I mean, just look at the US elections every time, because let's stop with the politics talk. But I mean, it's kind of a neutral thing to say that, like, yeah, in politics around the world, people will go against each other to kind of try and make the other one look bad. That's just the thing. Anyway, going back into the build. Yeah, I tried to make it more demure and more ruin-like by adding plants, but I think that didn't work. Again, let's say it all at once. Poison can't build small demure things unless challenged to do so, because otherwise he will gild it in gold, make it 3 times the size that it was, and start being inspired by ancient wonders of the world. So that's it for today. That's the lesson that I bring you guys. Again, let's say it all at once. Poison can't build small or demure things unless challenged to do so, because otherwise he will get inspired by an ancient wonder of the world. And also make it 3 times the size that it originally was, and clad it in marble or gold. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this chaos, basically. If you enjoyed it, there is the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. There is a notification button, but that will work when I start building small things without being challenged to do so. So basically never. But with that being said, I wish all of you guys a wonderful day. Bye bye.